So last class, we started working on factoring trinomials, and all the ones that we worked with, we had a leading coefficient to our squared term of a 1. So today we're actually going to start looking at factoring trinomials that have a leading coefficient other than 1. So let's start with number 1, and I just want everyone to practice one more like we were doing. So I want you to pause your video and do number 1. And go ahead and answer, again, questions, sub-questions 1 and 2, and then pause your video while you're doing it, and then check back for the explanation. Okay, so should have had no problems with this, and getting just to the sub-answers, the coefficients of y are added together and multiplied together, and that's how we got our numbers. And then we didn't write the answer, so I'm going to do that real quick. Answer is y minus 2 and y minus 7. All right, so now what I want to do is I want you to consider the following area model that I've already got completed. Notice on this that our trinomial, our resulting trinomial, has a leading coefficient. And our first step, as we learned last class, is to try and factor out this 3, but it's not going to factor out. So we're stuck with this leading coefficient. So what I want you to do is look at this and tell me, where did the 10x come from? And it might help to go back and look at what we just did. So if you look, you can see, same thing. We combine, so we're combining our coefficients. Of x. Okay, so that hadn't changed. But now I want you to look, where did the calculation come from for the negative 8? So pause your video for a minute and just figure out, where did the calculation come from the negative 8, comparing it to what we just did on number 1, and then write out your answer and then start the video back up. So as you're looking at this puzzle and structure, you can see, or you probably were able to figure out, that our negative 8 came from the workings of our area model, which is these two outside terms multiply together to give us that. All right, so then, let me just ask. Normally, what we were doing is we added these together, and they gave us the 10, and we multiplied these together, and they gave us this. But all of a sudden, we can't multiply these together anymore, and this all has to do with our leading coefficient. So my question is, if I multiplied these together, it gave me a negative 24. So what I want you to do is pause your video and see if you can figure out, where could that negative 24 have come from? Where could that calculation have come from? And then once you think you have the answer, I want you to compare it back to the area model on number 1 and see if that structure holds true. Once you have the answer, start the video back up and we'll discuss it. Hopefully eventually you were able to maybe come to the idea that the coefficient to our first and our last terms, when I multiply those together, they give me 24. So that changes our pattern a little bit. Before we were just saying, we were just having to look at the 8. That's because our last term was always being multiplied by a 1. So this rule still worked on number 1. It's just that we were multiplying this times a 1, so we never had to consider it. But now, as you're looking for your two numbers, you're multiplying both of these together. So you're looking for two numbers that add up to the middle and multiply to the product of this. So it's a little bit more thinking involved. So let's go down and practice this together on number 3. Okay, so we're going to do number 3 together. First thing we have on number 3 is we look at our problem and go, we have a leading coefficient. So first thing I'm going to ask is, can I factor this 5 out? And kind of a quick glance, I can see that the 5 is not going to factor out. So I went ahead and wrote my 5n squared and my 6 here in the box. All right, so now I've got to come up with what's going to go into these two. That's my puzzle. And what we just figured out is I can't just go on this 6 anymore. I have to do 5 times 6. So I need to get my factors for 5 times 6, which is 30. So my factors for 30, I've got 30 times 1. I'm going to write these out because 30 is kind of a big number. I've got 15 times 2. I've got 10 times 3. I've got 5 times 6. So those are my factors, and then I've got all negative ones. I'm not even going to investigate the negative ones because I've got all positive signs. So what I need is two numbers, which of these sets of factors are going to add up to a 17. So I can see right away that these guys are the ones that add up to 17. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in here. 15 in and 2 in. All right, so now let's look. Before we were able to just put our numbers on the outside, but we can't do that anymore because we already know that 15 times 2 is not going to give us 6. So we can't just do what we were doing. So let's start by examining our squared term. There's only one way, or one set of factors, because this is prime. So all I can do is divide it up as 5n and n. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my 5n on top and my n over here. And I'm going to solve my puzzle just based on this little bit of knowledge I have. So if this guy's an n, I can look at this and go, well, this has to be a 15. Just kind of working it backwards. Okay? And then I start to work on it and I realize, hey, this doesn't work. Because if I've got 15 times something, it's not going to give me 6. So I can tell right now that my two factors that I've put in here, I've put them in the wrong order. So no big deal. This is what a puzzle's all about. So I say 5n squared and my 6. This time I'm going to put my 2n up here and my 15n down here. Okay, and I start over again. I say my 5n has to come out here and my n has to come out here. Now I know that the 2 has to go up here. So 2 times n gives me my 2n. So now I need to figure out what goes right here. And I do know that 2 is a factor of 6. 2 times 3 will give me 6. I'm going to go ahead and put my 3 here. And then I'm going to just verify that this order worked. 5n times 3 gives me 15n. So all of them work. So this is the proper order of my factors. So let's go ahead and write my answer. And my answer is 5n plus 2 and n plus 3. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll put them in the right order the first time and everything in the area puzzle comes out easily. And sometimes you'll run into, that's just not going to work, and do it again. That's what puzzles are all about. So on number 4 and number 5, you'll notice that they both have leading coefficients that we're not going to be able to factor out. On all of these, our leading coefficient are prime numbers, so I've gone ahead and partially filled in your two puzzles. I want you to solve number 4 and number 5 on your own. Pause your video once you get the answer and turn it back on for the explanation. Okay, so just double check your answers. Understand it'll take you a while as you get used to the pattern and the structure. Keep working through the puzzles, you'll be fine.